Hi, everybody. Kevin Harned Ryan Hoke with you on this Monday after Derby. Hope everybody at least got some rest. Did you get any rest?
I slept, but the problem is the sleep quality was tough because I kept waking up at my alarm time for Derby morning over the weekend, both Sunday morning and this morning. So my brain couldn't turn off.
Yeah. Well, welcome in. We've got several hundred in now. You keep adding up. We've got a lot to talk about. Alert days, serious weather scenarios setting up for both Tuesday and especially on Wednesday. So we're going to go through those scenarios with you. Going to show you where there's severe weather at right now in the country. And I'll tell you, some areas today are in that high risk zone, a very rare issued sort of parameter from the Storm Prediction Center. So if you have the chance, share this, because we know a lot of people get on Facebook 8, 9 o'clock in the evening. They're kind of thumbing around, sitting in front of the TV. So we just want to be able to get the word out to as many people as possible of what we expect to happen over the next couple of days. So do yourself and your friends a favor and push this out so we can get as much fanfare out of this as possible so people know what's happening.
And this will be about the third sort of significant severe weather episode that we've had in 2024 coming up here. And of course, it's a multi-day event and a multiple round event. Kevin, it's kind of tough around here to get 2 days back to back of severe weather like this, but it looks like because of the way the atmosphere is going to refresh itself, 2 completely different warm sectors here, I think we could get it 2 days in a row.
Yeah, it looks that way. Both tomorrow and Wednesday. We've put the map up here, or the graph, where you can see sort of 3 rounds look possible, and we're going to do our best to sort of roll through that with you, and we'll show the maps to you. But with those rounds, let's talk about Tuesday. You see that would be 2 rounds coming our way Tuesday, and then as we look ahead to Wednesday, that one may be the more robust day, simply because we're warm. We're in that warm front moving through. We have the unstable air, and then the cold front pushes in. So Wednesday may be the most robust, but Tuesday can also bring some trouble. So we have the alert days for Tuesday and Wednesday. All hazards are possible. That means large hail, tornadoes, damaging winds, and even some flooding.
Yeah, the flooding because of the several inches of rain that some could receive. I do want to start off with what's been happening today, what's happening right now, before we kind of fade into how this is going to evolve in the severe weather risk the next couple of days here. So you'll notice all the showers and storms and downpours we had today, most of those are fading off of the radar. Some folks picked up more than an inch of rain since midnight around here. Now, you'll see down to the south that all the severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings in Tennessee have expired. I do want to show you a piece of video here. This is from Smithville, Tennessee. This is of a tornado from Rose Anderson via our affiliate WSMV4 there in Nashville. Smithville, by the way, is just due east of Murfreesboro, south of I-40 there. You can see the debris there in the distance, top of your screen there. Not all tornado videos are super clear and easy to make out where the tornado is. This one is one of those, but you can see the debris, you can hear some of the wind, you can, of course, kind of make out kind of that murky sort of condensation funnel there in the distance as well. That happened today, again, just south and east of Nashville, east of Murfreesboro, Tennessee there. We are not expecting anything like this as we go throughout tonight here in Wave Country. Our potential is going to be tomorrow and for Wednesday. Now, where is this coming from? Out to our west. Kevin, they've already got, tornadoes that have been on the ground today in Oklahoma due to this system.
Well, we've got several tornado warnings that still are developing. This is a late night. So for folks that have been watching today, of course, when you dial the clock back 2 hours, it's just 6:19 out there. But what you have to know is this is going to be a late night tornado event. And that's why we're just now starting to see these storms pop out there. And that is where we have that rare high risk. You'll notice it in the pink color. So you go high, moderate, enhanced, slight, then marginal, all pulling down to that bullseye right across central parts of Oklahoma. And that's where they're starting to just now really see those storms fire up. And consequently, over the last couple of hours where we've had the tornadoes on the ground.
Yeah, high risk happens roughly every other year in the United States. The last one was back in March of 2023. I looked that up before this broadcast here. And of course, this one happening today. So the multiple tornado warnings happening out there.
For us, it's been many years since we've had the high risk.
Since 2013. So November 17th, 2013 was the last time we had a high risk around here. Is that possible? Yes, but there comes with some strings attached on that. It's not likely at this time.
Yeah, and those strings are what happens between now and Wednesday, right? So let's get through Tuesday. They have put an enhanced risk area in, but it does not include any of our viewing area. We're still in that slight risk area. Now, I'll caution you because it's not important to know what, there are levels for a reason. But you shouldn't get caught up in what level you're in, because sometimes if you're like, well, we're just in the slight, we're not in the enhanced or the moderate or the high, we'll be okay. Well, the fact is there is severe weather that's going to happen in the slight risk area. So that's important to know. The enhanced risk area is just off to our north and slightly to our east, up across parts of Ohio and far eastern parts of Indiana. So let's get into the nitty gritty on this.
Yeah, so that's Tuesday. This is Wednesday, and notice the enhanced risk. It's that 3 out of 5, now covers a much larger area, and it covers all of our counties as well. So basically, this thing goes from just northeast of Dallas out toward just north and east of Cincinnati, kind of in the southern Dayton suburbs here. This is an expansive area of severe weather, and yes, there could be some upgraded risks above enhanced as we go through time here in parts of this area, depending on what happens between now and then, as we were just talking about.
There'll be a need to narrow that down more. So either the enhanced risk area has to get squashed and sort of pinpointed, or we'll have to add the moderate or the high risk area to it so you can at least get an idea of where there is a better chance. All right. So you can see today, while we had the garden variety thunderstorms around, no severe weather was expected here. I did see a report down in parts of Taylor County where we had some wind damage, and people claimed that a tornado would touch down there, but we could see nothing really valid on the radar about that. You'll notice tomorrow comes in with the slight risk area and then the enhanced risk area on Wednesday. Wednesday does hold a better setup for severe storms. There are a couple of reasons why, and we'll get into that as we get into the mapping here.
Yeah, so here we go to the ingredients. This is for both Tuesday and Wednesday, but I do want to caution that Wednesday is kind of leaned on a little bit more heavily for these graphics here that kind of show both days, and instability, moisture, wind shear. It is all there. We have been looking at some of the data today in regards to how the wind is going to be changing speed and direction with height. That's what the wind shear is basically. It's off the charts. I mean, these soundings and these photographs that the models are providing look every bit like some soundings and photographs that you would see in the Great Plains. You have a lot of turning wind with height. You have a lot of dry air entrainment aloft to get damaging wind gusts down to the surface. There's a lot of mechanics going on in the atmosphere that are kind of, nodding toward a more significant severe weather setup for us here. The moisture will be very high. We're talking about dew points. For those of you who can speak dew point, anything above 60 degrees dew point this time of year, plenty of moisture. Not only will we have it above 60, we're going to go above 70 a few times. The highest number I saw today was 71, 72 degree dew point.
That's high for this time of year.
That is very high. Yeah, like June, July, August, okay, we see that. But for May, that's a little early for that. And then, of course, the instability because of the moisture and the heating of the day being at play here, that will also be very high. And we'll have kind of two separate systems moving through, both providing their own lift. There's really, in sort of a synoptic sense, which is like a big picture sense of the atmosphere, not a whole lot to hold this back. Now, from a mesoscale, or just a small scale sense, there will be some things that introduce caveats into this setup. It is hard to get line after line after line of storms to come through and each be severe. Often they will influence each other and sometimes reduce the next threat, only for the atmosphere to recover and maybe the third threat come back and be like, okay, here comes more severe weather.
And then the question will beg itself, well, will we really see lines of storms, or will they be these individual supercells, which are even more dangerous and oftentimes easier to just tap into the environment and rotate themselves? And those would be the ones to produce the actual long track tornadoes, should we have those. And those look to be, now again, we're in the early stages of high resolution data for the period on Wednesday. So when we look at that, there is signs in the data that would be possible. And that would be possible as early as mid to late afternoon on Wednesday. So that's something we'll be watching closely for Wednesday that takes us into the evening hours. So really, it's a multimodal And that just means two types of ways we can get the severe weather: individual supercells and then linear, a line of storms that would move through, typically along a front.
Before we get into the timing and the threats here, more specifically, I have to put this out there. This is probably the most important thing you'll hear from us. If you don't have the Wave weather app and you're local to us here in the Louisville and Southern Indiana area, please get it. It's going to be really important the next couple of days. A NOAA weather radio, Kevin talks about this constantly, is like a smoke detector for tornadoes. It will wake you up in the middle of the night. If your internet's out, power has gone out, the cell service isn't working, a NOAA weather radio will work. It is saving lives all across the plains, likely over the, today and probably the last few weeks that they've had severe weather there. And charge your devices. I know some folks have things that, are medically necessary to be charged up with those lithium-ion batteries. Plug those in, cell phones, tablets, whatnot, to stay in communication with friends and family. If you lose power, that stuff, very, very important. All right, I want to go through some of the timing now with you, and you'll see these red bars. Whenever you see a red bar on any of these storm or rain chance graphs, that means we're getting into severe weather, severe weather time frame here, if you will. So between about noon and midnight on Tuesday is that potential. We might be able to kind of X out 4 p.m. a little bit. There may be a lull between this midday round and then additional storms that form during the late afternoon into the evening hours, a little closer to sunset here. But nonetheless, this is a pretty big window here that we have to stay on guard. And both days have pretty big windows.
2 waves on Tuesday. Here's why. And you'll notice that on our graph, we try to show this in multiple ways because sometimes data is processed a little differently by different people. So I really like the graphs. You're going to see as we were leading up to Thurby, Oaks, and Derby, we had the graphs because I think that really is a nice way to see the trends in what we think will happen. The highest probability, the colors help us realize the intensity. So I love the graphs. The maps will help, but the graphs help show it as well. Notice when we're in that 30 to 40%, that's just scattered. It doesn't mean it's everywhere. Once we start to hit the 60, 70% chance becomes more likely. And then certainly once we're in the 80, 90, 100%, then that's when we really expect it to happen. So just to give you an idea of the different levels. So you really see 2 peaks in this. One's going to come through midday, 11 a.m., noon, 1, 2 o'clock. Then we see a little bit of a lull, but before the next push comes in. 2 waves of energy because one's going to be fading as it moves our way, and we can show you what that looks like on the maps. And here we are in the morning. We're dry, but by the time late morning rolls around, 11:30, we start to see that showers and thunderstorms moving in. They may actually be at their strongest point at this juncture before they fade a little bit. And you'll notice as they move out of our area, they're still rather strong, but they fade out of our area. And then we see additional ones develop with the heating of the day. That's another wave of energy pushing through. Those could be severe. Now on the map, it tries to give you an idea of placement, but is that where it's going to be at 7 p.m. over Munfordville tomorrow? Yeah, don't really hone in on the exact placement because that will change. The idea is in intensity and in coverage, we see that there are going to be some strong storms around, both with the wave in the morning and then again, or midday-ish, and then again later in the afternoon and evening. And those will persist. Once the sun sets, we lose some of the energy. That's why they've weakened a bit there. So the important part is to know right now we're in that slight risk of severe weather. The main timing that we need to be on guard would be between noon and midnight. All modes of severe weather are still possible tomorrow, though they may not be as high of a level of intensity as Wednesday.
Right, because you just don't have the same amount of, kind of wind energy in the atmosphere like you're going to have coming up here on Wednesday. So this is day number 2 here. This is, similar graph to what you saw before, but now we're on Wednesday. And notice that we have upped this to a 100% chance of thunderstorms by 7 p.m. Has that red bar. That's the severe weather timing there between about 3 p.m. and 11 p.m. The deal is with this, and the reason it is 100%, is because we are going to have the warm front, the triple point to our north, where you've got three fronts kind of coming together, and the cold front all swinging through almost simultaneously. That is a lot of lift in the atmosphere. And all the models are keying in on that, saying, hey, everybody at some point is going to get, raked over by these supercellular clustered and even at times linear thunderstorms. These supercells would likely be the initial mode of these storms, Kevin, that we would see pretty much in the afternoon.
We talked a lot about the ingredients that we need. One happens to be the lift that comes with the fronts, the warm front and the cold front, both allow lift to occur. We talked about the shear. We have a tremendous amount. Ryan pointed out that we have a tremendous amount of wind shear. You have to have that to have tornadoes in particular. That's off the charts. I mean, that's very high. We also need instability. The sun that we're likely to see, and this is important because if we don't see it, then things will change from what we're looking at. But what we expect is that we're going to have some sun early Wednesday. This will add a tremendous amount of instability. All of the computer models are pointing to our instability, and we measure that in joules per kilogram. And that's not important. But what's important to know is that for the levels we're looking at for this time of the year, normal would be about here. It's over here. Okay, so we have a tremendous amount of what the modeling is saying will be instability in the atmosphere. And that's because of likely the sun, the warm temperatures we're going to have. We have the warm front working its way. Look at that high. We're not far from 90 degrees on Wednesday. All right, the storms have the ability to, once they spark, blow up instantly. And that's what you're seeing on the map. So once we hit the afternoon, we already have these thunderstorms developing. They'll all be strong, and the storms that develop will likely be severe, many of them rotating because of the fact we have intense shear.
Yeah, and the warm front exacerbates that shear because you've got a change in wind direction amongst a very tight gradient there. So you're going to get a kick in that wind at the surface, at sometimes to southeast and easterly. Something that they teach in meteorology school here is that when you get a southeast or an east wind at the surface, measured at the airport, that can increase your low-level shear to give you a greater tornado threat. That's why warm fronts can be a problem.
And this is the warm front.
This is it.
What you're seeing. So
yep.
Ryan,
I had to draw it right there. That's your warm front as it's moving in.
And the warm front will lift to the north, and then we're put in the warm sector with a little bit of dry time, perhaps.
Not much.
Not much at all. Before out ahead of the cold front, we see this linear line of storms, but embedded along that would be where we have the strongest storms. All right. So both with the warm front and with the line ahead of the cold front will be what we have to watch for.
And these may have embedded supercell structures. So like the warm front would have those individualized supercells with tornado and very large hail threats. And this would be more of a wind damage and sort of an isolated spin up tornado threat with that second round with the cold front moving through since it's more linear. But boy, it gets out of here in a hurry. And by Thursday, we're in good shape. So this won't extend any more than Wednesday night because of how fast it's going to move.
Yeah. So again, just to recap, when we look at Wednesday, we're looking at an enhanced risk area. That's 3 of 5 from the Storm Prediction Center. Could go up. Wouldn't be surprised to see some of our counties put in that moderate risk. I'm curious to see if they'll even go high risk with the data that we have for somewhere, because you saw how large that enhanced risk area was. So seemingly what would make sense is that there would be a somewhat smaller moderate, and if the data continues to point to it, maybe a more localized high risk area within that, similar to what we're seeing out to the west today. So it's too early to tell exactly where, but as that data starts to come into focus, they may be able to hone in on a particular place. Will that be here? Don't know. It's still, it's too early to tell that exactly. But what we do know is based on the data that we're seeing from across the entire Ohio and Tennessee valleys is that everything points to a severe weather outbreak for Wednesday. So the timing on this for us would be between that 2 p.m., that's an early start, and then 11 p.m. for the end. Does it go that whole time? No, but that's where we would be focused in on. And then again, being able to sort of dial that back down. These would be individual supercells along the warm front and in the warm sector, and then a linear line of storms along and ahead of the cold front. all modes of severe weather, very strong winds, very large hail, tornadoes. Some of those could be strong tornadoes and long-lived. That's the supercell nature that we see, and the flash flooding potential, because a lot of moisture is in the atmosphere and will rain that out multiple times over the same areas.
Yeah, several inches of rain, 2 to 4 inches in general in some of the areas that get hardest hit amongst both Tuesday and Wednesday combined here. So that is what we're tracking on the flash flooding side of things. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what we'll see potentially Tuesday and Wednesday. I've seen the comments lighting up. We have more than 1,300 folks just on our social media platforms, not counting Wave Weather Now on our app and our website here. And all those folks, I'm sure, have a lot of questions as well.
Right. But let's take some of the questions.
Yep.
Pop them up, and we'll do our best to answer them. We'll spend about 20 minutes here chiming in on some questions.
There's Braden Harper. So is tomorrow and Wednesday, a jacket off and sleeves rolled up on air type of day there.
We don't get into that. Whatever we have on when we go on is usually what we keep on.
Sarah's asking, how could this impact school dismissal on Wednesday? Boy, that's always a loaded question.
Yeah, it looks later though than the school dismissal. I know we have beginning at 2, but again, that's an early guesstimate. Too early to tell exactly. This looks to be late afternoon and into the evening. So perhaps some after school events may be impacted, but right now school on Wednesday, less of a chance to be impacted than Tuesday, frankly.
Yeah, Rebecca, you probably caught us after we showed the big versions of those maps with the severe weather risks. But yes, Anderson County is included in all of the maps that you saw. So the slight risk tomorrow, the enhanced risk there on Wednesday, Anderson County and much of Kentucky really involved on in both of those really. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see. Robert says moist environment, instability, frontal and convective lifting, shear, SIGMET time. SIGMET, significant meteorological phenomenon for pilots, essentially. That's a SIGMET.
Yep.
Let's see what else we got going on here. Chris is asking, no chance of a cap?
No.
Yeah, that's the problem with this. This is going to happen regardless here. Eliza says getting kids home will be fun. Not so much possibly Wednesday because it may be coming through after that, but Tuesday you might have some storms on the radar. We'll see during that dismissal time. Teresa says, thanks for keeping us updated. You are very welcome.
We'll do this again, by the way. Brian did one this morning. He's back on tomorrow morning. And then depending on what type of severe weather we may or may not be having tomorrow. Tomorrow's more conditional. It's the reason there's a slight risk tomorrow versus the enhanced risk on Wednesday. But if we're able to be in here tomorrow, meaning if severe weather isn't in progress, right, and we don't have to be in the studio, we'll do something more like this. But if we're on from the studio, then obviously you'll see that too. But we'll be on if we can be tomorrow evening. But I'd suspect you need to keep up with the changes as they come about. As we were leading up to Oaks and Derby, remember, there were changes that were taking place day by day. And as we got closer and closer, we were able to hone in on pretty much the exact hours of what we thought was going to happen. While it wasn't severe, it was important to the people at Churchill Downs and those having Derby parties. But we were able to sort of hone in on that. The same thing is true. In the past, you weren't able to keep up with us so frequently. But now with the invention of the apps, with the invention of channels like this where we can be on nonstop, you can. So that's important.
Dave and Jean are asking, isn't it a little unusual to have this type of weather here in May? And not really. This is severe weather season. Yeah,
not unusual. What maybe has been unusual is the frequency that we've seen tornadoes across the country this year in comparison to recent years. Mm-hmm. We have seen, certainly it's been a very active year, but that's, that goes hand in hand with the whole global pattern that we've seen with El Nino.
Yes, whenever you get an El Nino spring like this, look out. Chris Bowles is talking about our friend John Gordon at the National Weather Service. He mentioned the setup is what you see in school preparing to be a meteorologist. What analog or previous event is this comparing to? It's really hard to compare this to a previous event because every event is a little bit different. We don't want to say this is going to be like March 2nd, 2012 or April 3rd of 74 because they each had their own sort of characteristics here. So we don't really have like analog, a year, a date that we're really pointing to at the minute.
The comparison has to do with just the synoptic setup, with the triple point coming so close to us, the warm front, the instability, the extreme shear. I mean, when we're looking at bulk Richardson numbers and totals, indices, and the K index, and I'm speaking sort of gibberish to most of you, but the real weather geeks, including Chris, will know that when we're looking at sort of those diagrams and those numbers that are coming in so high well in advance. I mean, if you've been watching WAVE, you saw almost a week ago, late last week, we flagged Wednesday as an alert day. And we said, we want to make sure we get this out ahead of all of the Derby fervor, because we knew everybody would just be focused in on those 2 days. But we said, we don't want them to just go to sleep on us on Sunday and Monday and then go into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday with severe weather and not know it. So typically, we would not flag an alert day that far in advance, but because of two things. One, we wanted to make sure we got past all the Derby hype that goes on with just what happens with Derby. And also because when we were looking at sort of the AI, the SIPS data, that really pointed to a bullseye right over the Ohio Valley, including us here in Louisville. So we said, we better get the word out as quick as we can.
Yeah, Todd Richmond, our friend there, says, believe me, that weather radio, it'll definitely wake you up.
Yes.
Yeah, that's for sure. Mine goes off. My head hits the ceiling, I'll tell you that.
Do you have yours for every county?
So I only have mine for Jefferson County.
What?
And that is a rule in my household that I did not set, by the way. But I do have on my phone where I get a whole bunch more different warnings on there. So I can see those. Samantha's asking, has the Colorado tool updated? All right, for those of you who have no idea what this is, Colorado State University puts out this AI learning module thing where it can predict severe weather up to 8 days in advance in a general sense. It tries to basically be a machine meteorologist. It's not always perfect, but it does a decent job in the long range. Yes, I'm not showing it here today just because it is putting out some exceptionally high numbers that are they're alarming, to say the least here. We do have Storm Prediction Center outlooks at this point as well, too. So we do have human forecasters in the mix kind of giving their opinion here. But yes, that tool has been updated. If you want to go search for it, it's CSUMLP. Just Google that. You'll find it. And it's a severe weather forecast that they have there. And that certainly is concerning. But I don't really want to show that at this juncture, just based on the fact that I don't want to scare people too much with that. That's for sure. And that kind of dovetails into Eli's here. Well, we get a high risk here. What's your opinion? It's possible. It doesn't necessarily matter if we get one or not, just because the severe weather is going to happen regardless. I mean, whatever we affix to it is as important.
Think back to early April. We weren't in a high risk.
No.
We had a tornado in the metro area.
Didn't matter.
Scooted across southern Indiana, dumped over tractor trailers, destroyed neighborhoods, went across the river, hit into parts of northeastern Jefferson and Oldham counties. That was a moderate risk. So you don't have to have a high risk to have tornadoes on the ground. In fact, they're tracking storms out to our west. I'll just take you to one of our sister stations. This is Topeka, Kansas, and they are tracking on their SkyTrack the potential for a tornado there. So again, that's out near the Manhattan area of
I like how fast you can move that camera, by the way. That's actually kind of handy.
Different kind of camera system than we have. But again, some of our sister stations have been very busy today just out to the west, and we constantly keep an eye on them. But to answer, part of the question that was asked, it depends what happens through the rest of today and tonight with the atmosphere, because it's in constant motion and flux and changing, and we do really have to reset things. The atmosphere has to have time to recharge, and where that happens is super important. Will that be just west of us so that those storms move in strong tomorrow midday, or will it be that they just pass us and then develop and then hit, say, the I-75 corridor hard? I mean, we're only talking, 50, 60, 70 miles. Yeah. But that's important when it comes to tracking powerful storms. All right, let's come back to us and
boom.
Just there we got it.
Yeah. Katie's asking, at what point can I sleep soundly again? Thursday, like late Wednesday night, after midnight, and then by the rest of the week after that.
Well, the good news is on these, the timing has changed. Now, I'm not going to say it hasn't changed back, but the timing was overnight storm.
And that was going to be a huge problem if that transpired.
But now it looks like at least tomorrow's during the day, out of here by 11 p.m., All right, you'll get a night's sleep tonight, get sleep tomorrow night. And what about Wednesday? Well, it looks like it's out of here by 11 p.m. then too. So the nights should not be sleepless, but you're going to have to pay attention during the day.
Yeah, it's nice when severe weather can hold bankers hours, because that means everybody's paying attention, right? Angela's asking, have the CAPE values, that's just instability in the atmosphere, for Wednesday gone up from this morning's values when Brian showed them? They're still extreme. I mean, I saw some soundings that were pulling, 3,500 plus joules per kilogram for you nerds out there, CAPE.
And the lifted index, that's another instability. That
was -9, which was also insane. Basically, if you sneeze, you blow up a thunderstorm. That's how unstable the atmosphere is. When we talk about instability, it's much like a hot air balloon, right? You fill up a hot air balloon with hot air because hot air is buoyant when the air around it is cooler. So that air parcel or that balloon rises, much like how you develop a thunderstorm. You get these just kind of imaginary, but they really do exist, but they're invisible. You get these invisible pockets of warm air that get heated by the ground. Sun heats the ground heats the air. You get the idea. And as those heat up, they rise and they create those cumulus clouds and eventually cumulonimbus clouds, leading into severe thunderstorms. So when the atmosphere is that unstable, when you have that sunlight during the day to help power that up, you're going to get these extreme values, Angela. So yes, we still have those extreme values there, especially on Wednesday, because it looks like we won't have anything around the morning or midday to disrupt that at this juncture. Again, that can change based on what happens at the mesoscale and the microscale, if there can be some disruption in that.
There's another question, and apologies if you punched this one.
No, I have not.
But do you think there's a chance for an EF2 or higher on the tornadoes? And
Yes.
and that's what the risk areas help us sort of delineate, is when the Storm Prediction Center chimes in, you start to see the hatched areas, you start to see enhanced and moderate and high, but that gives us an indication of really the strength of the atmosphere, right? So the atmosphere can have tornadoes, and the atmosphere can have an even stronger or a higher strength in it, meaning the ingredients are really present. And that could pose the threat for large, and not only large by meaning EF2, so strong or violent tornadoes, but even long track tornadoes. And that's where we get those individual supercells. So it's possible with a scenario like this. Will we have this scenario on Wednesday? Well, here we are on Monday talking about it. We'll see how things change, and we'll have to see if it still looks like this tonight, tomorrow night, right? Because things can change. But right now, it looks like we could.
Right. And the Joss and Friends show there on YouTube, not only, if we've been talking about the strength of the tornado, they're talking about the shape. Are they going to be these large sort of wedge tornadoes that you've seen online or on TV before? It's not impossible, unfortunately, but that's something that we'll have to watch very closely, especially as we get into Wednesday. I don't think that would be as much of a threat tomorrow, no. But Wednesday, you'll start to have more ingredients for those larger sort of mesocyclones that can, unfortunately make their way down to the ground.
Now, April, if we could answer this question, we would be Houdini.
Yes.
When should it hit Hardin LaRue County on Wednesday? The idea is it's going to be between that time that we've put there. We don't know any more specifics than that at this point. So
we have to give you windows at this distance out. Now, when we're tracking these storms on the radar, we can start putting, minutes and hours on it, but we can't do it when we're still 24 and in some cases 48 hours away from storms being in our counties here. So, we are human after all, and the machines are still not good enough to do it to that, sort of minute by minute, sort of way of doing things at this distance out either. So.
Yeah, and I should mention, I'm going to put up this one on flooding. I just saw it. Let me get back to it. There it is. Mallory's asking, do you think it will flood the New Haven area? First of all, I'm from New Haven.
Yes, you are.
New Haven floods
Nelson
because
County.
of the Rolling Fork River rising. This is more of a flash flooding event as opposed to river flooding. So many areas that see the repetitive nature of these storms, Tuesday and Wednesday, saturated ground already, will be at a threat for flash flooding, not necessarily river flooding right away. Now, if we get repetitive rains into the weekend and next week, then the rivers will start to rise. But this type of flooding that we'll be looking at is purely flash flooding threats that will pose the problem sort of immediately, and then it sort of recedes.
And
So
for the Ohio River, something we're missing from all of this is snow melt to the north and east in parts of Pennsylvania and, the mountains of the northeastern U.S. here, because we're well past that period. So we don't have that going into the aquifer of the, the Great Ohio River Basin as well. So this will be literally just kind of localized rainfall going into it, which it needs a little bit more than that to see significant rises on the Ohio River. I don't think it'll be in big trouble. So that's good news.
And then Tanya's just saying, is this year going to be bad weather for tornadoes? Already has been. I mean, when we look across the country. So we're in the prime severe weather part of our year. Anytime we're going in from late April through May into early June, that's our peak season. So we're right in the heart of that being early May.
And I saw on I guess it was from CNN, we're kind of a CNN affiliate here, that April was the second most populous April for tornadoes in the United States. So April of 2024, second most number of tornadoes in the U.S. for a given April. And those records, I believe, go back to like 1950 in a good fashion. So this has been more active than usual for sure.
Yeah, no question. And not only active in the sense that the tornadoes happen, but active with the sort of preceding warnings. The Storm Prediction Center has, for the most part this year, done a nice job with pinpointing those areas. Sure. It's the whole reason behind how we put alert days out. So that just gives you an idea of how much better the data has become to allow us to look almost, in some cases, more than a week in advance and say, hey, we're watching this day. Sometimes we've faded away. It's like, okay, well, things changed enough. We don't have to worry about it. The alert day falls off. Most of the time, it holds and something happens. So again, we put this alert day out last Thursday saying, let's make maybe Wednesday. When was it? Wednesday or Thursday?
Oh, brother. I think that may have been Thursday. Yeah, I think it was Thursday we were doing that, if I remember.
Yeah. So again, it was just to say, hey, we want you to know we're watching Oaks and Derby, but we're also watching next Wednesday.
Yeah. Let's see here. Sierra has a really good question. Where do you find a NOAA weather radio? And the answer is nearby, thankfully. Places like Target and Walmart, places like drugstores, like Walgreens, CVS, sometimes they sell them. You can find them at like Best Buy. Like they're all over the place.
We used to have relationships with Kroger and Walgreens. Both of them held them in stock.
Yeah.
So those would be two places I would start with.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Amazon. If you have Amazon, you can just get on, send it right to you.
And some of these big box chains, kind of the Krogers and the Walmarts of the world, they actually do have, kind of a weather operation in the background. And that's why you often see umbrellas, kind of pop up at the front of Target, on a rainy day. So sometimes they'll put the weather radios out in a place that's a little easier to find when you're leading into a severe weather event. So fingers crossed that they do that so that everybody can pick one up. The price of these, not terribly high. They're well under $50 in most cases here. And it is a very worthy investment. Also, make sure you change your batteries in your weather radio, because nothing is worse than losing power and then losing your weather radio along with it.
Yeah, and have your devices charged,
It's easy.
Phones.
If you take 10 minutes just to prepare, you'll be in such a much better spot when you have seconds to react.
And and you should have like a little kit. I know this sounds crazy because we probably go through life without ever needing this, but in that kit, like a pair of shoes, because if you're in bed or you're on the couch or in the basement and something happens, it's like, what happens when severe weather does hit or tornadoes hit? It tears everything up. There are nails exposed, glass is there. You got to be able to walk through it, one. So make sure you have that. If you have power outages that go for a while, you're going to need to have charging devices. So batteries and a flashlight are helpful. If you have, I always keep one of those little power bricks charged.
Oh, those are fantastic.
Because then, at least you're going to have a couple of hours of charge.
Yeah. And you can recharge your phone a bit, which is critical.
And at least watch what's happening. Right? I mean, you don't want to be left in the dark, so to speak.
Literally. Yeah. So it's always a good idea to be prepared. And it makes you feel a little better too, when you know that, okay, I've got a plan in place. When a tornado warning comes out, just calmly grab the kids, go to the basement or to the first floor, kind of interior hallway away from doors and windows. And that's all you got to do.
Most people aren't going to have this. Is the thing, because I know a lot of people get anxious, during severe weather. Here's the deal. Most of us aren't going to have to worry about this. but there may be a handful that do. And if you're in that handful, it's best to be prepared. How do you know if it's you or not? This early in the game, you don't. So you can either roll the dice and decide, oh, I'm good, I don't need to do any more preparation, or you can make some plans.
Cody's asking, how late do you all generally stay in the studio? And when there's severe weather, we're in there till it's over pretty much, especially with tornado warnings like that.
We've been in there around the clock many times. So we're in a different studio in here. This is what we would call.
We have 3 studios here.
This is a digital studio, so we're able to do everything here. I mean, if I wanted to punch up stuff, we have all controls for us. This doesn't take any other part of the building. So if we needed to jump on, boom, we can do that right from here, just like we're doing now. If we go into the main studio where we do our newscast from, it takes a couple of other people to control our microphones, to control the different cameras that we're using in there. So usually when we're on, when you see us in nonstop weather, we'd be in the other studio where we have all of our sort of functions because all of our weather computers are in there. In here, we can get to them, but it's a little clunky. We only have 2 keyboards and 3 monitors in front of us here.
Ta-da.
So we each have one. So we can do a lot from in here, but it's a lot easier when we're out there and we're just more comfortable because that's what we know. So if there's nonstop severe weather going on, we're going to be out in the studio where we can talk to the directors, where we can talk to each other, where we're each looking at certain things.
Ashley asks a great question here. Is the bigger tornado threat in the supercells or in lines of storms?
No, that's a good question.
And it is a good question because it's different, right? So a supercell has a very large inherent tornado risk, right? And the problem is that a supercell, since it's kind of a self-contained thing, could put down a very large and long-lasting tornado if it stays as an individualized supercell. So you get your biggest, most intense, most dangerous tornadoes from supercells. However, within lines of storms, you can get these isolated tornadoes. Now, generally, they're not as strong. Sometimes they can be, though. Generally, they're not as strong and they're not as long-lived. The problem is that they can often be a little bit more difficult to predict, a little bit more difficult to see on radar, and that can be a real problem, too. So the worst tornadoes are in supercells, and sometimes the hardest tornadoes to deal with are in those lines of storms.
Yeah, and I've just zoomed into a couple out there.
Look at that. Yeah, you can see that there is a supercell storm kind of embedded in that line there where it kind of curls up into that hook shape west of Perry, Oklahoma there. That's I-35 that runs between Wichita and Oklahoma City there, so just west of I-35. Once you get east of I-35 there, it gets a little bit more, bushy and treey. So this is kind of right now over open plains, getting ready to head toward Perry, Oklahoma. I think there's a truck stop there off I-35, if memory serves, that it's threatening at this point. So yikes, that looks bad.
Yeah, that does. And we've got several tornado warnings lined up out there. Again, out ahead of the low pressure, out ahead of the cold front. And we'll have several of these moving our way. Not just one, but 2 over the next 48 hours.
It's impressive to me just how quickly the atmosphere is going to reload between Tuesday and Wednesday. These are like 2 separate systems moving through. Now, the parent sort of, upper atmospheric setup to our west, isn't going to change all too much. But the surface weather setup where you get the area of low pressure and the warm front and the cold front, that stuff is going to be moving through incredibly quickly to give us those 2 kind of distinct warm sectors that we're going to see. Whenever we say warm sector, it's literally where these storms are here that you see on the radar. It's between that warm front to the north and east and the cold front to the west. In fact, I'll draw it here. The warm sector is this guy right here. This is the warm sector. And the reason it's called that is because it houses all the warmest air of the system, because that warm front is now to the north. The winds are generally out of the south, southeast, or southwest. And that's where you have the most instability there for those severe thunderstorms. And whenever you find yourself in the warm sector in April or May, either in the plains or the Midwest or here, across the upper South and the lower Midwest, that's a problem because that usually means severe weather could be on the way should there be enough ingredients in place.
Now, the interesting part about that is in the supercells, the storms typically have the opportunity to be bigger and longer track.
Absolutely.
So that's the
Yeah, if they're not disturbed. So sometimes you'll get supercells that merge together, split apart. Sometimes a line of storms will intersect the supercell and kind of suck it up. A lot of storm scale interactions can happen that can either, decrease or increase in some cases the tornado threat with a supercell.
Catherine is asking, is straight line winds more of a concern? Those will be a concern
Yes.
too, just because of the nature of the storms moving in. But we have enough shear in the atmosphere that a lot of these storms that initially fire will be rotating. So even rotating storms can cause straight line winds, but they can also cause tornadoes. So both would be a concern.
And kind of throwing back to what we were talking about a moment ago is we may have a situation where we have embedded supercells within lines of storms too. You can have kind of a two things going on at once sort of situation there. And that's really problematic, especially when you get a supercell kind of at the end of a line of storms, tail end Charlie, as we call it. That's what happened back on April 2nd with the tornado in Prospect, by the way.
And then, Caden, there's a lot of people that always want to know, are schools going to be closed? We don't make those decisions. Sometimes the school systems will call and just get our opinion. But, it looks like these rounds of storms on Wednesday will be after the close of school. So after that 3-4 o'clock time frame.
Yeah, and that would be optimal. Unfortunately, part of the evening, the kind of the tail end of the evening commute, 6-7 o'clock may be threatened, but not so much when school is dismissed.
Todd's just asking PDS Wednesday. What that means is if we were to see a watch or a warning that may be issued, would that be tagged with PDS, which means particularly dangerous situation? Could be with the amount of shear that we have. Wouldn't be surprised to see that could happen.
And I think they did have a PDS tornado watch out in Oklahoma today, one of those red boxes you see right there.
Angie, is Jim Cantore going to show up here on Wednesday? Well, it's possible. Mike Seidel is not because they let him go.
Could you believe that? I have met Mike before. He came down Mississippi State when I was in college. Nice guy. He's on the road most of the year, so I'm sure that was tough.
They had a lot of cuts at the Weather Channel.
They did, so, yeah. They're owned by kind of a bigger company that
Allen
Media that's been kind of scaling back there. And unfortunately, he was one of the folks that got some bad news.
We'll see if Jim Cantore shows up. Haven't heard. A lot of times we get a heads up, though.
Yeah.
We can reach out and ask.
And then like last time, too, sometimes there are bad rumors about that don't come true. I heard that, Jim Cantore was going to be in.
Well, they said he was in town, so we made a call, and I was like, hey.
Are you actually here?
No.
He was not here. So don't read into the rumor mill too much. If we say he's here, then we've researched it and we know. But if you don't hear us say it, then it's probably not true.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
Let's see. I'm just scrolling through some of the comments. We're going to wrap it up. We're after 9 o'clock.
We've got so many folks on here this evening. We really appreciate you tuning in and trusting us with this because this is an emerging platform for us here.
Yeah, Sierra says thank you. We say thank you back. Where can we find what channel to be on our Weather Radio?
That's a good question.
Mine has so many. Okay, yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah.
So a quick Google search. They call them FIPS codes. And you can program them. I always like to program the surrounding counties, especially the ones to the west, southwest, just kind of get that little C.
Yeah.
If you're here, just put the counties around you. That's helpful. So you can find those online. Just type in FIPS code, Jefferson County, Kentucky, Hardin County, Kentucky, whatever. It'll tell you the 6 digits separated by a dot.
And Lizzie, if you're asking about like the channel, much like you would tune on a radio, like 1077 or something like that.
Was that your radio voice?
1077 SFR, whatever. If you're talking about that kind of channel, just kind of flip amongst the channels. I think there's like 8 or 10 or something like that until you pick the clearest one that comes in. That's going to be the one that's closest to your transmitter. All right. So just that's a trial and error one. Whatever one sounds the best, you'll hear that automated voice.
Yeah. Some folks just asking where to go. Anxiety's high. The key is being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So just as long as you have a plan, as long as you know how to reach, the availability to get our signal, we're going to walk you through it. You don't have to be scared unless we're reading out, the street name where you live.
Yeah.
And then at that point, well, that's a good time to be scared. But until then, just be prepared. Not scared. And that's really important because what we don't want to do is hype this thing up to where everybody is freaking out. You can't really think clearly on what to do. Let us walk you through it and you're going to be okay. And that's super important because we're not certain this is going to be a massive deal. right now the data points to the fact that we could see some tornadoes scattered tomorrow, more likely on Wednesday. Let's see how it unfolds over the next 48 hours. We've got time. This is the beautiful part about it. You've got time to be prepared. You're going to get sleep tonight. You're going to get sleep tomorrow night. Just wake up knowing that, hey, I need to check in and see what's going on with the weather. Let's do that again. And the good part is you don't even always have to think about it yourself, because if you have the Wave Weather app, we're pushing it out to you and we're saying, hey, you need to check in on the weather. So we're sort of doing the work for you. So let's just use some common sense. Let's not get so worked up. Let's not let other people get us worked up. I know I hear a lot of times like, oh, it's so dramatic. You all go on the air. No, we're not going to be dramatic. Wrong channel. We're going to walk you through what you need to know. Let's take a deep breath. We're all going to be okay. Let's just get through it.
We have a lot of skin in the game because most of us are from this area. Kevin's
And
from
my whole
Nelson
family.
County.
I've got 99 first cousins.
I lived in like 5 different areas of Jefferson County growing up. My family is still here. So like, we don't want to panic our families and friends. So we're going to give this to you calmly. One programming note I do want to say, because we were getting a lot of the same questions over and over. We probably answered in some way, shape, or form your question already by this point. If you would like to see this broadcast in its recorded form, it will be available just shortly after we get off the air here on our Wave Weather Facebook page, on our Wave-Louisville, Kentucky YouTube channel. And as of today, thank you, Brian Good, Twitch, our video on demand on Twitch is now working. So you'll be able to see this broadcast in its recorded form there as well. Because I know a lot of folks are watching us live on Wave Weather now, which is going to be, in our weather app or our news app. But you can go to those places, especially YouTube. YouTube's so easy to get to our videos from. And you can watch the recorded version there. A lot of your questions have probably been answered: timing, placement, threats, et cetera, et cetera. Otherwise, we'd be sitting here saying the same thing over and over for 3 hours on end, and that's not productive for anybody here. So we are going to start wrapping this up shortly here. Let's see. Truly on YouTube says, I thought Ryan was from Mississippi. No, I'm actually from Louisville here.
Sounds like it, doesn't he?
Mississippi. The problem is I went to school at Mississippi State. They actually, have a fantastic meteorology program. So I drove 450 miles from Louisville down to Starkville, Mississippi for 4 years, got my 4-year Bachelor of Science degree at Mississippi State. So yes, from Louisville, went to Mississippi to get my meteorology degree, came back. Now I'm at home with my family. So it's fantastic, right? It's kind of an awesome thing there. We have some other folks dropping names of people who are dramatic in the chat. Oh, that's fun.
Sorry, I mean to start that.
No, absolutely. Also some fun statements about that too. It's always interesting to see how people react to things we say.
Well, I wasn't talking about anyone in particular, really. I just always hear that.
No.
People like, man, you all are always so dramatic. I'm like, well, no, not really. I'm not. I try not to be. In fact, that's a conscious thing I try not to do, is be like frazzled.
And just pay attention to our tone. If we're ever on the wall-to-wall coverage during a tornado warning, particularly Tuesday or Wednesday here, pay attention to our tone. If we start to seem like things are getting tense, like if you hear a little tension, you'll know that things are getting intense, right? But we're not going to sit here and scream and shout and do all that mess. That's just not what we do.
Eric is saying, appreciate you guys. Thank you. We appreciate the accolades. We really do. We can tell who's watching just by the folks that are in the room. So Thank you. How do you guys personally keep a cool head when dealing with severe weather? Well, and it really depends what's happening. If the computers aren't working, or if we have things not going, sometimes you'll see me get a little frustrated. I try not to let that show. But the fact is, when we're in a zone of severe weather, everything changes. It's a very different type of day for us when I am in severe weather mode versus sitting here talking about, anything else, because everything has to be in the right order, right? Like, meaning, all right, we've got this storm, it's rotating. Are there any others? And this is going to be the tough part about tomorrow and Wednesday. There could be multiple ones. Sometimes it's fairly easy. If you've got one tornado warning, you're tracking it, and that's easy, right? You just check back in. We're going to check the velocity. We're going to check the correlation coefficient to see if there's any debris. We're going to check in with emergency managers. So in our operation here, in our weather enterprise that we run at Wave, we each have individual responsibilities that we automatically, if that warning were to go off right now, Ryan and I would know exactly what we're going to go do. Each of us have completely different responsibilities during severe weather.
That's right.
So when that happens, and we actually have practiced this, and severe weather gives us that practice too. But if that were to happen, we would immediately get in the studio. We would immediately get on the air. I would be in the chroma key. I would be dissecting that storm. Ryan would be looking to make sure there were no other threats around the area. And I can see what he's looking at. So once we clear that, then it's time to do other things. So then Ryan's on the apps. Ryan's talking to emergency managers. Once he has something, we bounce to him. So the fact is, we're sort of like a little well-oiled machine when there is severe weather between our team, because we each have individual stations that we man. And as long as that's moving smoothly, then there's nothing to get sort of crazy about. Now, can the weather affect us if we know that there's damage taking place, that we know if somebody's been injured or killed? No question. That's hard. We try to just stay focused on the mission, and the mission is to keep as many people safe as possible. And that's our mission during severe weather. Whether it's a severe thunderstorm, a flood, a snowstorm, an ice storm, our mission is to try to keep as many people safe as possible.
And I should point out, too, that we often do postmortems after our severe weather coverage.
Always.
We look back at what we did. We look back and see what we could have done better, what mistakes were made. Look, we're human, right? And how we could have served our viewers better, because we want to be better for you. And this can be a life-saving moment. If, we've made a mistake in the past, we fixed it, and we know now how to get the information to you in a better way. If that's more efficient and we can get you the word faster, that's probably going to help save some lives at some point. So that's why we want to always kind of put things into perspective, how we did, how we're going to move forward, what plans are we going to make to fix things.
Yeah. All right, we're at 9:11. I've gone 11 minutes past the time I said I would. So we're going to wrap it up. We'll say thank you all for watching. I just want you to make sure you jump back in tomorrow morning between that 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. time frame. I know it's Indiana Election Day tomorrow. Yes. So Brian, as long as nothing is going on in this room, we'll be on, and we'll have to figure out how we're going to handle that with some of the elections, because they'll probably be using this room. But at 9 a.m., I don't think much is going to be happening.
I can't imagine.
So let's hope that we can get that on. Tune in then. Tune in tonight at 11. Back on tomorrow afternoon with us. We'll be keeping you updated with what's going on. So we'll say goodbye for now, and just stay tuned for updates. Be prepared, not scared. We'll all make it through this, and we'll be here tomorrow to walk you through it. We'll be here again on Wednesday.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you later. Stay safe.
Good night.